In a year with so much criticism and scrutiny for flopping, for tanking, for style of play and too many three-point shots being put up, the NBA could not afford for the Oklahoma City Thunder to win another NBA championship. And what they needed was a savior of the league to remind us why we love basketball, why we love the competitive nature of the game, why we love watching elite athletes do amazing things and not just flop and flail on the ground. And that savior came in the form of the San Antonio Spurs, led by the best player in the NBA, Victor Wembanyama, who proved that he is better than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He is elite on both ends of the basketball court and could lead his team to the NBA Finals in year 3, putting him on a trajectory that we've scarcely ever seen. We will do more of a legacy talk with Wemby after the NBA Finals and we see what happens there, but it will be a very fun discussion to have. This Spurs team was unbelievable on this run. The resolve they had to deal with the ups and downs of their very first playoff run together is truly something special. You look at so many young teams and they flame out in the tough parts of different series. In round 1, the Spurs lose a game to the Portland Trail Blazers where Wemby gets hurt and he has to sit out a game, and you start to wonder, are the Portland Trail Blazers going to find a way to take this to 6 or 7 games and make things interesting? And the young players for the Spurs stepped up in a big way. Round 2, you're playing against a very physical Minnesota Timberwolves team, a team that just beat up the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic, a guy that we considered the best player on the planet for years. And you wonder, how are the Spurs going to fare against that basketball team that's been to the conference finals in back-to-back seasons? And then Wemby gets ejected for an elbow, and they lose that basketball game. And they responded in a big way, only to advance to play an Oklahoma City Thunder team that had swept the first 2 rounds of the playoffs and won the championship the year before with the 2-time MVP. And the Spurs could not have been more special in this series. There were ups and downs throughout the series. In games that they lost, it looked like maybe they were too young or they were tired or, various other things, a lot of foul calls going against them. But in the games they won, particularly in 6 and 7, what a performance from their team as a whole. And that's what makes this team so special to me. The NBA could not have asked for a better NBA Finals. You get the Mecca, New York City, a team that has not been to the finals since 1999. Ironically, lost to the Spurs in 99 and a young Tim Duncan. Going up against the face of the league in Victor Wembanyama in the best player. And a rising Spurs team that has so many great players. And again, what I'm talking about makes this team so special is Wemby is the best player on the planet. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute. Dylan Harper at 20 years old in his rookie season was such an X factor for them. There was a middle part of this series where he was dealing with that injury and you could tell that it was affecting him. But in games 6 and 7, he was great. His energy, his rebounding, his defense, his shot making. He hit some great big shots in the fourth quarter of this basketball game tonight. And he was really, to me, probably the biggest difference in this Spurs team coming out on top. Stephon Castle, a player who's in his second year in the NBA. Absolute dog in him, talking trash, getting fouled hard, but being aggressive, continuing to attack and put the pressure on the Oklahoma City Thunder. All these young guards putting pressure on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and these Thunder players, forcing them to make tough contested shots on a night-to-night basis. And you have, Keldon Johnson tonight hit 2 3-pointers to start the fourth quarter that gave the Spurs huge momentum. 6th man of the year. We know what he represents. Julian Champagnie tonight was great. I think he hit 6 threes and had 20 points, if I'm correct. 20 points on 6 threes. He was really, really good and hit a ton of big shots for the San Antonio Spurs. Devin Vassell bringing so much energy. I love this Spurs roster. It was an up and down series for a guy like Carter Bryant. He didn't play a ton tonight, but you saw moments that he provided a spark for his basketball team as a rookie. And De'Aaron Fox, I forgot to mention him. De'Aaron Fox coming back from his injury probably too early and still providing so much value, getting the offense in its sets, dribbling the ball up the court and just giving the team another ball handler to take some pressure off their young guards in Castle and Harper. And tonight he played a really good basketball game, and you would imagine going into June 3rd, he will have more time to get healthier for the NBA Finals. So if you're a Spurs fan, you got to feel excellent about your chances going into the NBA Finals against a New York Knicks team that is very hot. We know that they've been dominating basketball teams for quite some time now. They whooped up on the Sixers. They whooped up on the Cavs. And now they're running in to an elite buzzsaw in the San Antonio Spurs. And we'll do a breakdown of that series here in a couple days when I can really, dig into some of the matchups earlier in the season and things like that. But the Spurs in this game, going into halftime, they had a nice lead and then it kind of dwindled away. And you went into halftime and they were only up 3 points going into the half. Wemby was playing all right. It felt like maybe he was a little tired from time to time, but he was making big plays, and you just saw the connectivity of the Spurs roster. And even after the game, you saw Wemby, all of his teammates hugging him, and it was a really cool moment because, obviously Wemby's so big, but he's got his arms around like every player on the team. And it was a really symbolic moment to me to show how much these Spurs players love playing together. And it's really unique because a lot of times in the modern NBA, you have a lot of ball dominant scorers, guys who are going to take high volume shots. Your Luka Doncic's, your Shai's a pretty high volume shooter. It's just something that exists a lot in the modern NBA. But this Spurs team really focuses on playing team basketball. And it's really a lot of the times what made the Spurs teams of old so elite that you had a guy in Tim Duncan that was great on both sides of the court, but they played so well together. And everyone felt like they had a lot of confidence to make big shots. Bruce Bowens, Robert Ory's, guys like that would come in and make big shots in big moments to help them advance. And this team has that same feel. And you go into the NBA Finals and I'm more than likely picking the Spurs. I've been picking the Spurs to make the NBA or win the NBA Finals for a little while now. But you have to feel really good about the way that this team plays together. In the first half, they were getting out rebounded. In the second half, they absolutely dominated on the glass. They finished the game. Wemby had 22 points, 7 rebounds, a block, and a steal. But he had big moments, especially in the fourth quarter. He's getting to the foul line. He had a really good contest on, I forget who it was shooting for the Thunder in the corner. But on the fast break, he was sprinting down the court. And guys were just really stepping up. And that's what I was watching the game with my brothers. And before the game, I was talking about how game 7s, you see guys step up in a big way. And you see guys really fold. It happens all the time. There's players that live for these moments and players who don't know how to handle them. And we saw some players that didn't know how to handle them, like Chet Holmgren, who, is going to be the discussion of a lot of trade talks this summer, especially with guys like Giannis maybe being available. Anthony Davis, could the Thunder look to upgrade at that position because Chet was so bad in this series? He finished the game with 4 points, 4 rebounds. And Victor Wembanyama just absolutely took his lunch money and embarrassed him. Chet Holmgren was an all-NBA level player, and he was terrible. Alex Caruso, who had been really good all series, 3 of 14 tonight, absolutely shut down. The Spurs did just an excellent job on those players. So, in the Spurs going into the fourth quarter were only up 3 points. They started the quarter hot. The Thunder started to make a little run, and ultimately the Spurs shut it down by making big shots. Champagnie, players just Dylan Harper, hit a nasty 2-pointer, deep mid-range shot, and I think he hit a 3 right after that as well. I just love watching this team play basketball. The way that they play off of each other, the energy, the way that they trash talk, it just reminds me what I love about the game. And I try to be really positive when it comes to talking about the league because I think the NBA media has so much negativity towards the league at times. It feels like maybe analysts and former players don't actually like watching the NBA anymore. But the Thunder are my exception because I can't stand watching them play basketball because even on a night that Shai was shooting efficient from the field, was playing a good basketball game. He had a three-pointer on the wing. I believe we were in the fourth quarter at this point. But on the left wing, he pump fakes. The defender jumps by him. And instead of just shooting the wide-open three-point shot that he had just gotten himself, he dives to the left into that defender. And for whatever reason, the referees are calling that a foul. And I don't understand it because they had a movement years ago to eliminate that from the game. These unnatural shooting motions. Either call them an offensive foul or just don't reward the player for that move. Because it's the difference when you watch old NBA players, in particular a guy like Kobe Bryant, who used the pump fake a ton to his advantage. Pump faked all the time. D-Wade. Guys like that would pump fake a lot. But when they pump faked, they'd go up for the shot with the intention of scoring. And that's the difference, in my opinion, in watching a guy like Shai play. He goes up so often with no intention to score the basketball. It is purely with the intention to get fouled. And you see these shots are just flying off to the left or right. Well, they're just flying wherever. They're not even going towards the basket. And it's so different than what we used to watch our superstar players do. And that's where I think it's really frustrating for us fans of the league. The Thunder are in an interesting spot. Obviously, there hasn't been a repeat champion since the Golden State Warriors in, 2017, 2018. So it's been almost 10 years. And every time we feel like we have a new up-and-coming dynasty team, they're chopped down the next season and haven't even made the NBA Finals in quite some time. But, you thought the young Celtics were going to rattle off a few championships. The Bucks with Giannis, Jokic and the Nuggets, this Thunder team. You feel like these teams are going to start to be a dynasty or potential dynasty, and then they get knocked out the next year. So it's really hard in the modern NBA to stay competitive, stay consistent. And J-Dub, I think his contract is going up to $41 million, if I remember correctly. And Chet Holmgren's contract is also going up to about $41 million next season. So they're probably going to lose players. They have a team option on both Hartenstein and Lou Dort. You're probably going to lose one or both of those players to free agency because you're not able to pay all that money. And small town Oklahoma City is probably not going to go deep into the second apron, you wouldn't imagine. So they're going to have to make moves on the margin, and they've done a great job building assets when it comes to draft picks and young players. So they have some flexibility to make moves, but you have to be a little concerned that you look at the San Antonio Spurs team that has so much talent, but they're so young. You could only imagine they're going to be a better basketball team next season, and if you're the Thunder, I would be worried about how I'm going to compete with that team when Wemby's a year older, when Dylan Harper's not a rookie anymore, Stephon Castle enters his third year in the league, and these guys have played together because they're not going to be paying their guys for a couple more seasons. So they're going to be able to keep that roster together, and the Thunder are going to have to start a little bit of a retooling. You keep Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and apart from there, you really see what's open. Could you trade J-Dub for, can you make a move with him? Could you make a move with Chet? All of those players will be very interesting to see what the Thunder do this upcoming offseason. What I really hope, even though Adam Silver says that it's not a big deal, the flopping and the flailing, I hope that the Thunder get to a point where they realize part of your legacy and part of the way that you're viewed is the way that the fans feel about you when they watch the basketball game. When you're talking about some of the greatest players you've ever seen, accomplishments, stats, awards, all of those things matter. They do. Championships, all of those matter. We were talking about Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all these great old players. But when we watched you play, how did you make us feel? Did we watch and say, that's one of the best players I've ever seen? That is the best player I've ever seen. When you watch this Thunder team and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you don't get that same feeling that this is the best basketball player in the world, or this is one of the best guards I've ever seen. And his accomplishments say that he is, he's got 2 MVPs, a championship. His accomplishments say that he's in that discussion. But when you watch him play, you don't feel that way. And I'm sorry, if Thunder fans get mad about that, I apologize. But it's just the reality of the way that this team plays basketball. And if you want to be respected and you want to be remembered as a team that was beloved or a team that was a great dynasty, you have to play basketball in a way that we respect. You just have to. There's things that we dislike about old champions. Whether you didn't like the way that the Miami Heat came together with LeBron or KD going to the Warriors, or people call Jason Tatum corny. There's criticisms for every champion, but not to this degree, not to where the whole world genuinely disdains this basketball team because of the style of play. It's just different. They have to figure that out going into the offseason, and we will see what happens. But congrats to the San Antonio Spurs. That was an unbelievable series. I'm pumped to watch the NBA Finals. We'll do a ton of breakdowns. If you love the NBA, make sure you take a second to subscribe. Appreciate y'all watching. Cyborg out.